Looking at the budget, where are our big ideas? Why is Labor so policy light now? Where is the vision and the implementation of grand change?
I want to start with you, Cos. You have been in the Labor tent. You are now outside of the tent. How do you reflect on that question?
It's a very good question because it actually emulates the mindset of the country at the moment. We've had bushfires, pandemic, the inflationary crisis that everyone's now living through, and Australians are dying for hope. They're wanting to see vision from their politicians, and at the moment, they're not seeing that. And so the level of despondency out there in the electorate is fairly significant. And I think that at the moment, unless something drastically happens tomorrow, we will see a continuation of that mindset in the electorate. And I think that what happened in 2022 will repeat itself again 2025, possibly.
What do you mean by that?
Well, the minor party vote, or people who didn't vote for the majors, exceeded 5 million at the last election. I expect it to be closer to 6 million this time round, unless something changes. At the moment, the major parties are offering a version of politics that lived in 2019, and Australians are not there anymore. They're wanting to see the future, and at the moment, the major parties are not offering that at all.
Okay. Now, just to be clear, next week the Treasurer has an hour to answer people's questions, so they will get to respond. We didn't want to invite the government or the opposition for one reason. We didn't want people to consistently tell us, we'll wait till the budget tomorrow night, you only have hours to wait. We thought that would be boring television. So, David Pocock, what do you think Labor needs to do to be bold and to not be this Labor light that you see them as being, Stephanie?
Well, it certainly seems like an exercise in managing expectation rather than aspiration. And budgets are about priorities, as we hear from politicians. Well, it's also about who do we want to be as a country? What do we want young people to be thinking about their future? Do we want to saddle students with debt? Do we want placement poverty for students? Do we want 3 million Australians living below the poverty line? Like, these are questions I think a lot of people are asking. And what I see from Labor, and I think the major parties, is sort of tinkering around the edges when we all know that we are facing serious challenges. You take housing as an example. We see these sort of small policies which they hope will be enough to get them through the next election, rather than actually dealing with housing and using everything available, including tax reform, to start to deal with it. And my sense is that we either need to see courage from the Labor government, or a minority government will potentially force them to have courage.
Okay, so Matt Kean, you've been a treasurer at a state level, but the biggest state in our country, New South Wales. If you were Jim Chalmers tomorrow night, what would you do?
Well, budget should be about unlocking the potential of our country. And right now we've got a major challenge, the major challenge, which is inflation. So you can't do things that will fuel inflation. What can you invest in that won't fuel inflation, but that will grow the capacity of our economy? Well, that's productivity enhancing things. And if I was the Treasurer tomorrow, I'd be investing in three things. Firstly, I'd be investing in enabling infrastructure that will unlock the potential to get new sources of energy generation into our system. So I'd be investing in building transmission infrastructure. More energy supply means downward pressure on household bills.
But they've got that plan.
That's deflationary.
They've got that plan already, don't they?
They're using financing arrangements and off-balance sheet methods. We invest directly in roads and rail. We should be directly investing in transmission infrastructure. That brings more supply into the system. That puts downward pressure on prices.
Okay, and what would your Liberal colleagues say in Canberra? Wouldn't they just run a campaign against that?
Well, I think everyone agrees that more supply into the system puts downward pressure on electricity prices. I'm a member of the New South Wales Liberal team, and our policy was to unlock more potential, more supply, get that into the system, because we know that's the key thing to drive downward pressure on electricity prices. The second thing that I'd be investing in is incentivising the states to do serious regulatory reform. That looks like planning reform, because it takes too long to build things in this country and it's too expensive. There needs to be a standardised planning system that enables communities to have their say, but also developers to get on with the job. That's how we'll bridge the gap of the 200,000 house shortage that we currently see in this country. But the other thing is we'll stop the hold-up in new energy generation getting built in this country. The third thing I do is invest in the most important thing we can do in the short term and long term, and that's the productive capacity of our people. That's why an investment in early childhood education, pre-kindergarten, is the most important thing we can do. We know that growing the prosperity from one generation to the next is determined by education. We need to double down on that, and the closest thing we have to a silver bullet in unlocking the potential of our people for the long term is investing in early childhood education. And by childcare reform, you're actually lifting the participation rate,
They have
getting
put
more people into the workforce.
a lot more investment in childcare already, though.
Well, we need to do more. We need to make sure that no person has to choose between having a career and having a family. That's an investment that will be deflationary because you get more people into the workforce and it also grows the overall size of our economy.
Now, Janine, the government's not here. Jim Chalmers will be answering on his budget next Monday and beyond, right here to people who are framing questions to him. But do you think it's a fair charge that they are Labor light, that they have under-delivered?
Yes, but I mean, this is a government that doesn't have a huge majority. And I've been doing budgets for 40 years. I remember when they were actually a financial document, you just wanted to know that you weren't in the red. I mean, it was only a few years ago we were very excited. The major narrative was, are we back in the black? Will we ever get back into surplus? These were the important questions. Yes, it'd be lovely. Everybody here's got their wish list for the big, bold vision. I'm not sure that the budget document is where you do it. I think that's where, when you're elected, you should give your vision, because if they came out with something too radical, as we know it's been tried, it will be, well, why didn't you take it to the electorate? So I think the most important thing we've got to understand is that only a few years on from the pandemic, we are hopefully going to have a bit of a surplus. That is a good start. I think anything, the future made in Australia, terrible name, but obviously they are trying with that for that to be their vision. Now, $1 billion is no small amount. It's probably not as big as everyone wants, but I think that's where the focus is going to be for a vision.
OK, made in Australia. What do you make of it?
Look, I want to see, I think Australia has enormous potential in terms of the clean energy revolution and our ability to lead. But how we do it is important. And so I listen very much to what Danielle Wood said as the Productivity Commissioner, which is like, make sure, we have sensible investment considerations, make sure that we, have guardrails, and make sure there's an off-ramp so that, industries aren't dependent on it. But to the question of why, why are people feeling, what is a lack of vision, I think it comes to the point that Ken Henry makes continually, which is that younger people in this country feel like when they look to the future, they don't know that they can achieve what their parents did. They don't know that they can raise their kids, have a house, all the things that they've seen their parents do, they don't know they can achieve that.
So do you think it's fair criticism of the government?
I think it is. I think it's basically 20 years of bad policy that is leaving us to this point, and I think a lot of that is to do with absolutely terrible housing policy at all levels of government.
And are they now in the political frame to take responsibility for a series of other government's bad decisions?
I think that, I think they are in the political frame for that. And to their credit, they have done pieces on housing, which I support in terms of things like investment in social housing and trying to incentivise the states to do the right thing in terms of reform. But we need to go harder in housing in particular, because Sydney, where I'm from, is the second most unaffordable place in the world as a city for housing. And that goes to the heart of why I think so many people are feeling let down right now, is because they just, we're a rich country, we tell ourselves we're rich, but when it comes to it, when we're trying to make those decisions, we don't feel rich at all. And that's really the fundamental problem I think we're facing.